What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And today's video is inspired by Jesse Michaels and Graham Hancock. I saw this amazing clip that I'm going to play two little segments from last night that really got me inspired and got me hyped up in regards to this journey that I'm on, that we're all on. And it has to do with this broad category of learning and talking. Now, for me, talking about fringe topics, I it's wild that I now have this channel and I'm making all this content. I'm researching all this information very actively because this has been the stuff that has been most interesting to me in my life for so long, but it's something that I haven't always felt comfortable talking about because of the inherent ridicule that can come with it. And it's crazy that like investigating these topics and these different issues comes with ridicule. Like, why would you ever ridicule anybody for being curious? I guess people would say, oh, well, you're stupid for acknowledging it because there's nothing to it. But it's a very bizarre phenomenon, especially when we encourage people and kids and everybody to ask questions, to be curious. And even if you want to say that you're on the side where you just don't think, which is not true because you just probably haven't looked into it, but if you do want to say, well, like, there's such inadequate evidence, or the evidence is, there's just no evidence, or whatever it may be, God, these topics are so dang interesting. And if they're true, they completely change the entire paradigm that we live within, the paradigm that is parroted by the media and our leaders at large. Why wouldn't you want to look into this stuff? Why wouldn't you want to know the true nature of the universe? And if there's information that's outside of the general realms of publicly accepted knowledge, outside of the realms of like university studies, why wouldn't you want to at least take a look at it? And then when we talk about the afterlife, everybody talks about wanting to know what happens when we die. We all die. Our physical bodies die. And to say that it's a silly endeavor to try and investigate to whatever extent you can what happens after you pass away is wild to me, because everybody wants to know. I think people have been convinced that it is a fruitless endeavor to try and figure this out. But I don't know. Maybe, I don't think it is, but maybe it is. But even if it is, potentially, I still want to try and figure it out, because there's actually a ton of information. I'm not just sitting here banging my head against the wall. I wonder what happens. I wonder what happens with no input. Like, there is tons of information out there. And I'm going to do my darndest to dig through it, because what is more interesting than answering this question and to understand what all of this is about? Ultimately, if you don't do that, what are you doing? You're just plodding through life. You can say you're trying to get a job, you're trying to have a family, you're trying to make ends meet, you're trying to be successful, sure. But what's the broader picture? What's the broader context of this? Because I think if you come to accept that we are going on forever and ever, our souls, our energy, our essence, we're doing the things that matter in this particular manifestation of life. But how does it apply more broadly? I mean, don't you want to know? Because maybe that's going to impact how you live your life. So just on that chance, I think everybody should want to at least give it a try. And the last thing they should do is be shamed about it or be made to feel stupid about those endeavors. And I definitely used to succumb to that type of pressure, but now it's just been so amazing to get to talk about this stuff and to have an audience kind of grow with me and tell me that they also have these questions, and that you guys also are going on the same journey, and we're going on it together. Like, it's so lit. So anyways, coming back to this idea, learning about fringe topics, we definitely still, it's way less than it used to be, but you definitely still face this type of potential criticism, especially from folks that are have not at all touched these subject matters. They can be very quick to criticize or ridicule or laugh or think less of you. But in the clip that I want to show you, I thought Graham Hancock and Jesse Michaels, in an amazing discussion, do this phenomenal job of explaining exactly how you can call it the establishment or scientific culture, university culture, education culture, shuts down things that are sort of in the realm of intuition or imagination, and why they shouldn't do that. Even if you just look back at the broad scope of inventions and discoveries made by many, many prominent people throughout history, that they themselves claim some sort of preternatural contact, whether it's extraterrestrial, angelic, demonic, whatever it may be. They have had these different ways of receiving downloads and getting information. I thought this was so cool, but more importantly, I think they just hammer home this message that, yeah, of course we should be able to use our intuition. Why can't we? Why is it so shunned in the world of science and research? I have my theories about that, but I want to play this clip for you guys because it felt very empowering for me and probably for all of you who are on this similar quest and journey.
No.
Because that's one of the things that they do, is that they drug shame me. They say that because Hancock has taken the ayahuasca, this is why he comes up with all these crazy ideas about the past.
Well, the truth is,
anything that works to shut somebody down, they will use.
It goes to like this epistemological argument of, you somehow can't learn anything through intuition in the modern day for it to be valid.
Yeah.
You have to like piece it together through pure inductive rational logic, which is not how anybody operates. It's not even how rationalists operate if they audit themselves.
It's not. There's a real place for intuition and imagination.
Absolutely.
And that place, that's what archaeology in particular has tried to drive out, and most sciences have tried to, drive out.
You look at the epiphenomena of science itself, the most productive science comes through dreams and revelations and downloads. There's actually a great book by Professor Jimena Canales called Bedeviled about the history of demons in science.
How interesting.
Maxwell had a demon, Descartes had a demon, Laplace had a demon, all these guys who are literally building the science and tech that push humanity forward, that all these kind of nitpicky, current physicists or whatever, are building off of now, had these sort of revelatory downloads.
Stuff that came out of altered states of consciousness.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know you brought up Francis Crick and the double helical structure of DNA.
That's right. And Kerry Mullis,
Kerry Mullis, Kerry Mullis saw an alien too.
Yeah. So it's time actually that, and I'm glad to say that that's what's happening at Imperial and at UCSD, is that science is beginning to take these experiences seriously, rather than just dismiss them of our brain on drugs.
And it's so beautiful to see science merge with, honestly, ancient traditions. Because if you look at St. Thomas of Aquinas, he had an angel hierarchy.
Yeah.
You look at the Syrian Neoplatonist Iamblichus, he had an angel hierarchy.
Yeah.
And you see these people mapping the spirit world via DMT, and you have these various beings.
Yeah.
And I think a really interesting project, maybe in a year or two, once we get some more data, is how do those line up to some of these ancient Kabbalistic traditions?
Definitely. Yeah. That's what needs to be done. And again, science just has to get over its hang up about intuition and about altered states of consciousness, and unfortunately it's beginning to do so, and we're seeing some real solid.
It's so cool. I gotta say, I become probably one of the biggest fans of Jesse Michaels in the last month as I've discovered his podcast and his work, and he's just so knowledgeable, and he just references all these people and all these examples of things that I've never even heard of, people that had these different, whether they're extra dimensional or extraterrestrial encounters, and how they fed into their work and the contributions that they provided to mankind. And it's just so cool. And it's so inspiring to hear two very intelligent people talking this way about these types of phenomenon and saying how we should be encouraged. And ultimately, here's the thing. When we attack each other for wanting to explore these topics or wanting to try and learn more and believing in some of these things that maybe mainstream science or the mainstream population rejects, we're just hurting ourselves. We are ultimately trying to figure this stuff out for the benefit of everybody. And whether we're talking about technological endeavors having to do with ETs, or kind of, if you look at what I'm trying to do, trying to understand the nature of reality and trying to understand, what are we in? What is this matrix? What is this simulation? What's going on? And where are we trying to go? Ultimately, we're doing this for each other, but yet it seems to be each other that are attacking, we're attacking each other. I'm talking about the common folks, the common people, us people. And it's not that there are bad people that are attacking us or things like that. What I think has happened is we've been so manipulated and brainwashed by the zeitgeist in regards to how we view this type of fringe material or fringe information that hasn't been channeled and processed and produced through these very specific, strict channels. We've been programmed to immediately dismiss it. And so what's happening is, I think it's these reflexive reactions that people are are falling victim to of saying, oh, the presidents or the leaders or the newscasters, they laugh at this information. I'm going to laugh at it too, because I want to be a part of this higher system of the perceived intellectuals perhaps in society. So I'm going to have that same reaction. I'm going to ridicule you too. You're believing that, man. You're crazy, because I'm not. They don't, and I don't either, because I'm with them, and they're the ones in charge. So I think that's what's happening. It's not obviously people, I think, being nasty or negative for no reason, but it's just this reflexive response from, I think, this conditioning over our entire lives of how the world is set up. I think it's changing, though. Big time is changing since I was a kid, but I think that's what it is. Now, this last clip has to do with this idea of thinking about, just from a broader perspective, of thinking about why we have this reflexive response, why we kind of pile on to people, and where is that idea, where are those influences coming from? They're coming from the top and they're trickling down. And they're coming from the we're following the leader in a lot of ways when we are refusing to look into these fringe topics or this type of history or these type of ideas that's not specifically curated by mainstream science. And Graham Hancock, I think, does an amazing job of letting us remember who exactly are our leaders. And look, I'm not going to say it as broadly and as sweepingly as Graham Hancock says it in a moment, but I've talked about this many times on the channel. You look at the way that we pick leaders, not just in the US, but across the board, all over the place. And there just seems to be this broken system that always seems to raise up. And look, I'm an attorney, I can say this, okay? But that seems to raise up, and the vast majority of members of Congress seem to be attorneys. These are people that go out there and fight for a living, and oftentimes will have to be somewhat deceptive for the interest of their client, granted, but still, like, this is what's programmed into their beings. And then ultimately we end up with a leadership structure that can succumb very easily to being manipulated by finances. It has no problem being deceptive for the most part. And we joke about that all the time. That's so backwards, and we just laugh it off like it's no big deal. So remember where these blueprints are coming down from, not from the people in our society. Again, I'm not going to say all of them, obviously, but by and large, not from people or societal structures that we should really be taking our cues from. So here's Graham Hancock just dropping the mic at the end of this little soliloquy. But I want to share this with you guys. Check this out.
If there is any oversight, that oversight might well take an interest in the possession of the power of gods by crazed teenagers, which is what all the leaders of the world today are. I have no respect for any single leader in the world today. I don't care what party they're from. I don't care what country they're the leader of. I don't have respect for any of them. What they're not leaders, they're misleaders. They're pursuing their own agendas and deceiving the public in order to get support behind those agendas. We need a whole new way to function in the world if humanity is going to continue as a species. If anybody cares about that, and I certainly do, I have 9 grandchildren. I don't want them to grow up in a world that's suddenly devastated by a nuclear holocaust because of the stupidity, the idiocy, the irresponsibility, and the macho attitudes of these teenagers in old bodies who are running the world.
Mm-hmm. He speaks some truth there, and he lays it down. But again, I show that clip to remind you guys of, and you probably know this, okay, if you're watching this channel, if you stumbled upon this content, so maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but just to remind everybody of where we're taking our cues from. A lot of the structures that have been set up, who have they been set up by? We don't have to think like that. We don't have to be constricted or restrained. And I think, at what point does imagination and intuition and all these other things, when we're researching these topics, when does it go out the window? Because I know when we were kids, when I was a kid, we were told the opposite. Use your imagination. It's the most powerful thing. And then all of a sudden you want to go off the course a little bit and ask some questions and learn some information or posit some theories that are a little bit off the beaten track, and you can be very easily ridiculed. And I think it's just a tactic. I think it's just a way to keep things the way they are. So and I'm not saying everybody who ridicules you is obviously part of the core system that is pushing this out, but we've been sort of unknowingly brainwashed to have these immediate responses to jump down people's throat. Again, it doesn't make anybody good or bad when they do this. I just think they don't even realize what's going on. But yeah, this stuff is so interesting, right? If you're watching this video, I'm sure you agree with me. It's the most interesting and arguably the most, not even arguably, the most important things that we should be trying to learn about. You know, I kind of lump the two together because I think what's going on in the universe is very related to what's happening when we pass on from this life and in next lives, and what's the purpose of this life or these various lives. It's all intertwined, and nothing else can be more important. So that's all I got for you guys today in this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hopefully this was an uplifting, empowering video. If you guys are also pursuing the same type of information as am I, let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.